Hello, and thanks to everyone for joining this lightning talk, Data, Tracking and Reporting During a Pandemic, where I'll be focusing on communications tracking during the COVID pandemic and how we adjusted our workflow. While I'll mostly be focusing on what we did during COVID, these conventions work for a variety of crisis situations. My name is Brian Piper. I'm the Director of Content Strategy and Assessment at the University of Rochester. And the main part of my job is looking at communications data for performance monitoring and optimization opportunities, which I do daily. For the most part, any reporting that we do for leadership happens on a monthly schedule, and insights that we gather generally come by observing data for longer periods of time in order to identify patterns or irregularities in those patterns. When the pandemic hit and campus shut down, classes went remote, and everyone's jobs and families went remote, there were a host of issues that arose. Emails went out from leadership and HR to specific audiences with immediate messages, both internally and to our local communities. From a communications tracking standpoint, the first issue was all the new content that was suddenly being created. Every site had to have COVID messages, and our root domain and our medical center subdomain both launched COVID microsites. The school microsite focused on leadership messages, campus information for students, parents, faculty, and staff, while the medical center microsite featured public health issues and awareness, with a focus on our local audience. All of this content was promoted on social channels and in newsletters. There were a few key changes that we had to make with our data analysis and reporting. First, we had to shorten our timelines and watch for data insights on a daily basis. Our web team immediately set up a Google Data Studio dashboard for our department with real-time information so we could monitor traffic. We also set up some quick and dirty internal dashboards using Google Data Studio and Tableau, which allowed us to easily gather information on key pieces of content from multiple different sites that we wanted to monitor without having to go into Google Analytics every time we needed to check up on those. Our search optimization monitoring became much more granular and would change on a daily basis. As soon as we saw a new keyword opportunity on content that we just put out, we would optimize for that term, which would then provide a whole new list of potential keywords. For example, on our medical center microsite, we started off optimizing for coronavirus research and COVID-19 research, and from posting FAQs on safety and awareness and different research articles, we quickly started ranking for and targeting more specific people also ask terms like, how often do I need to wash my hands? And there are still constantly new questions that people are consistently asking with increasing search volumes that are really just looking for the right piece of well-written content to answer that question most effectively. In March, we were focused on health issues, safety, preventing the spread, working and studying from home. There were many emails sent directly to specific audience, but we needed our content to reach all of our audiences more broadly. So we promoted almost everything on all of our channels. We put some of our typical monthly reporting on hold and just focused primarily on the new content and monitoring that it was performing well compared to our previous baselines. Then, by early June, we had to start pivoting to focus on restart messages, back to campus, back to work, leadership messages, and providing answers to questions that people had. With this content, it was important for us to know that we were reaching all of our various primary audiences and that our communications were effective. We took a much more targeted approach with this content, really focusing relevant content on the proper channel. We promoted messages to parents and students on the appropriate social channels and newsletters, and focused information for staff and faculty in our internal newsletters. We also started a new newsletter specifically focused on restart content, and we monitored traffic from all of those channels through a campaign in Google Analytics using UTM codes. We set up weekly reporting for senior leadership to track the effectiveness of our content relative to our benchmark numbers for high-performing content. That way we could assure them that our messages were getting out and effectively being engaged with by the different audiences. We also set up timeline-based dashboards for our team to use for monitoring ongoing performance of different channels in order to make decisions about those channels and the messaging. And taking such a granular view of our content and reporting such specific numbers across channels each week gave us immediate insights into channel performance and audience engagement. As we continued our monitoring, we noticed that we didn't have benchmarks for some content. We hadn't really done leadership Zoom town halls before or posted leadership messages as YouTube videos, so the initial communications across those channels became our benchmarks for those types of content. Now, in the past few weeks, we've been pivoting again to look at moving forward and preparing for what the next few months are going to bring. We're also now back to our regular tracking and reporting and are starting to look back through all of the data to understand the type of content that performed better on which channels and which got more penetration with particular audiences. The key to making all of this work is communication between the different channels and having excellent people who already understand the importance of data and are all looking for insights. Our social team is amazing. We have excellent social listening and daily monitoring updates to promote leadership awareness of issues within our audiences and potential difficult conversations being had. The social team also does regular data reporting with insights on key engagements, and this really helped our leadership monitor the pulse of each audience and address individual issues at a personal level. Our social team also tags each post with key strategies, so we can look back to determine engagement rates based on the strategic initiatives being promoted, and they add UTM codes to their content that links back to any campaign-specific sites. Our newsletter team has also been using UTM codes and Google Analytics campaigns to track performance around particular content. They also monitor their own open and click rates in order to find insights and trends. And our web team is always optimizing site performance and user experience based on the data they track using Google Analytics, Tag Manager, Search Console, various plugins, and heat maps. So that pretty much sums up my discussion on data and communications during COVID and how important it is to monitor your communications across all your channels on a much more granular level in order to discover when audiences aren't engaging with your content and reveal channels that are underperforming. Thank you very much for your time.